She came flying down the dirt road like my ranch gate was decorative. Big black SUV dust boiling behind her, gravel spraying across the yard, and before I could even rise from the porch chair, she slammed on the brakes and leaned out the window to yell, "Move this stupid gate. This road belongs to the community." That was how Karen liked to arrive, loud, fast, certain like volume could turn trespassing into policy. And if you've never met a person who mistakes an HOA title for a crown count, yourself lucky. The first time she cut through my property, I figured she was lost. The second time, I figured she was rude. By the 10th time, with fresh tire tracks carved through grass I'd spent months nursing back after the drought, I knew exactly what she was, the kind of person who sees somebody quiet and assumes they're powerless. So I walked down to the gate, slow boots crunching in the gravel, and said, "Ma'am, you can't drive through here." She laughed. "You must be new," she said. "This neighborhood has access rights. I'm the HOA president." I folded my arms and looked at the sign bolted to the gate, "Private Ranch Property." "No HOA owns this road," I told her. She rolled her eyes. "Sweetheart, everything around here belongs to the HOA." That one word, sweetheart, told me plenty. She wasn't confused. She was one of those people who'd been throwing her weight around for so long she'd started to think authority was whatever came out of her mouth. Then she looked past me toward the barn and pasture and said, "Honestly, this place should have been sold years ago. It ruins the view for the neighborhood." That ranch has been in my family for 52 years. My father built that gate with his own hands. I learned to ride on that land, bury dogs on that land, grieve on that land after my old man passed. So, no, I didn't enjoy being told by a woman in designer sunglasses that my family home was messing up her scenery. But I stayed calm because people like Karen always make the same mistake. They think the loudest person wins. She gunned the SUV and drove straight through again, leaving the gate hanging open behind her. 10 minutes later, my neighbor Jake rolled up on his ATV, coffee in hand. "Let me guess," he said. "Karen again." "Karen again." He shook his head. "She's been doing that to everybody. Acts like the HOA runs the whole valley." I closed the gate, looked at the fresh tracks through my pasture, and something clicked. Not anger exactly, just a quiet solution. Jake watched my face and said, "She's not going to stop." "I know," I said. "Next time her SUV's not getting near this gate." The next morning, a flatbed truck came in just after sunrise, carrying 6 industrial steel bollards, each one thick as a fence post and ugly in exactly the way I needed. The driver stepped out, whistled, and said, "Somebody really wants privacy." "Not privacy," I told him. "Precision." Jake showed up halfway through, stared at the steel, and nearly spilled his coffee. "You're serious?" "Very." The crew dug deep, set each bollard in 4 feet of concrete, and by noon, those things stood there like soldiers. Enough room for the gate to swing, enough room for a person to walk through, but no chance in hell for a vehicle to squeeze around. Jake circled them slowly and grinned. "Karen's gonna lose her mind. She misplaced it a while ago," I said. About 2 hours later, I heard that engine again. Same whine, same speed, same bad attitude. She came roaring down the road, didn't slow until the last second, then saw the steel. Her brakes screamed so loud, birds flew out of the trees. For a moment, she just sat there. Then the door flew open, and Karen stormed toward me across the gravel, heels sinking into dirt like the land itself was rejecting her. "What is this?" she shouted. I stayed in my porch chair. "Steel." Her face went red. "You cannot block HOA access. This isn't HOA land." "Yes, it is." "No," I said, "it really isn't." She pointed at the bollards like they'd insulted her personally. "You have 24 hours to remove these, or I'll have the HOA tow them." That one made me laugh. "Tow them," I said. "Please, I'd love to see that." She snapped pictures of everything, then leaned in and hissed, "You have no idea who you're messing with." That was the funny part, because by then I had a pretty good idea. She sped off. Jake wandered back over from his fence line and said, "She's going nuclear." "Probably." "You think she's done?" I looked down the road and said, "Not even close." 20 minutes later, a tow truck rolled up behind the gate, Karen's SUV right behind it, like she was leading a victory parade. She climbed out smiling and pointed at the steel posts. "Those illegal structures," she told the driver. "Remove them." The tow truck driver walked up, knocked one knuckle against the steel, and gave her a long look. "Ma'am, these aren't getting towed." Her smile slipped. "What do you mean?" "Because they're on private property." She pointed at me like she was exposing a fraud. "He doesn't own this land." Well, the driver said, "According to the county map I checked before coming out here, he owns this road and everything behind it." Karen was not a sensible person, because right then a county truck pulled up. The officer stepped out and saw Karen. "Good," she said, rushing toward him. "This man blocked HOA access." The officer ignored the drama, walked to the gate, studied the bollards, then opened a folded land map on his truck hood. He traced the dirt road with one finger and said, "This access road was sold with the ranch in 1974. HOA boundary ends at the paved road. It does not extend here. Jake made a little choking sound behind me, trying not to laugh. Karen stared at the map. That's impossible. Everyone in the neighborhood uses this road. The officer shrugged. That doesn't make it legal. Then she pulled out her phone and said, "Fine, I'm calling the police," Jake muttered. Well, that's ambitious. 10 minutes later, a deputy arrived. He got out, saw me, and smiled. "Morning." "Morning," Karen frowned. "You know him?" The deputy gave a small chuckle. "Oh, yeah." "Good," she said. "Then you know he's illegally blocking a community road." The deputy looked at the steel, then the ranch, then back at her. "Ma'am, you really should have checked the property records before picking this fight." Jake finally lost it and laughed out loud. But that still wasn't the moment her world really tipped sideways. The real twist came next. "This also isn't the first complaint we've gotten about you," the deputy said. Karen blinked. "Excuse me?" "Not about HOA enforcement," he said. "About harassment." That word hit hard. The smug look left her face fast. "He's harassing the neighborhood," she snapped, pointing at me again. The county officer folded the map. Protecting private property isn't harassment. The deputy walked back to his patrol car and returned with a small folder. "Last week," he said, opening it, "we got reports that fake HOA violation notices were placed on homes outside the neighborhood boundary. One told the owner they had 48 hours to vacate." Jake whispered, "Uh-oh." Karen said, "Too fast. That has nothing to do with me." The witnesses described a woman in a black SUV. The deputy continued. Then he turned the folder around and showed her a photo of one of the notices taped to a front door. In the lower corner was her signature, not typed, signed. Her face went white. "That could be anyone," she said, but there was no strength left in it now. The deputy closed the folder. "We're trying to determine whether this is harassment or criminal impersonation of authority." For the first time all day, Karen didn't have a comeback. She just stood there, breathing hard, glancing at the tire tracks running through my pasture like scars. "This isn't over," she said. The deputy nodded. "You're right. Tomorrow morning, the county survey team is coming out to mark the official property lines. And if your vehicle crossed onto private land as many times as these complaints say it did..." He let that hang there a second. "That's trespassing." She turned and looked at the pasture. There weren't just a few tracks. There were dozens. The next morning, the county survey crew came out with flags, paint tripods, and enough paperwork to choke a horse. By noon, the line was marked clear as day, and every marker said exactly what I'd been telling Karen from the beginning. The road was mine, the gate was mine, and her little HOA kingdom ended a long way before my fence. By the end of the week, word had spread all over the valley. Karen had stepped down from the HOA pending investigation, which is polite suburban language for got caught and ran out of excuses. A couple of the neighbors she'd pushed around even stopped by to apologize for not speaking up sooner. One older couple brought pie. Jake said justice tastes better with crust, and honestly, he was right. What stayed with me wasn't just the satisfaction, though that part was sweet. It was the lesson underneath all of it. Power doesn't always arrive in a uniform. Sometimes it shows up with a clipboard, a fake smile, and a title nobody bothered to question. And the dangerous part is how often people give in just because they're tired or polite or busy trying to keep the peace. That's something I understood a lot sharper after Karen. Not everyone who acts official has authority, and not everyone who stays calm is weak. A few evenings later, I was back on my porch at sundown, watching the last orange light hit those steel bollards. The gate was closed, the pasture was quiet, and for the first time in weeks, there was no black SUV, no dust cloud, no woman screaming about rights she never had. Just wind in the grass, cattle in the distance, and my father's land, finally breathing easy again. I sat there smiling, because justice doesn't always come in one big movie moment. Sometimes it looks like concrete setting, hard county flags in the dirt, and the exact right person being forced to hear the truth out loud. So here's what I keep thinking about when somebody hides behind rules, titles, and paperwork to control people they were never meant to control. Where exactly is the line between enforcement and abuse? And if you've ever dealt with somebody like Karen H.O., a landlord, boss, neighbor, anybody drunk on a little borrowed power, tell me how it ended. Was karma enough, or do some people only stop when the law finally drags them there?